Sasha DeWitt, and this is the Studio Notes Podcast, the show where I chat with artists about the real-life stuff of being an artist. Hi, and welcome to Studio Notes with me, Sasha DeWitt, and today's guest, Emma Jones. Emma is a Scottish artist and printmaker living in Berwickshire. So Emma, in season 1 of the podcast, one of the things that I'm asking everyone is to talk about their journey down a creative path. So I'd love to hear how you got started.
I guess mine is probably quite unconventional. I didn't go to art school or anything like that. I've been a web designer since very early days, like mid-90s kind of thing, when it was all kicking off. So web design, graphic design was the way I started, and probably about 8 years ago, maybe something like that. I've always sketched quite a lot, but I got a lino printing kit for Christmas. It sat around for 6 months, and then I went on a course, just like a one-day workshop, and it was kind of like that sort of lit something, and all of a sudden I was just kind of absolutely obsessed with it. So I went, and I was a freelance web designer, and I went very quickly to sort of running the printmaking alongside that. So I started off doing quite graphic work, sort of t-shirts, cards, animals on bikes, all that kind of stuff, just I think because that's my graphics background, so it was all quite, lino really suited me because it was black and white and you could print multiples, and I was just fascinated with the fact that you could create this stuff traditionally. I was really enthusiastic, and from there it's kind of like branched out into lots of different printmaking techniques, more painterly techniques, less graphic, and I'm also painting now, sort of branched into sort of mixing it up between printing and painting. Now I tend to do working large with paintings and working quite small with print. So that's where I'm at just now, but it's kind of, I'm always like a kid in a sweetie shop, sort of I'm just fascinated. I just love it. I've just taken over my whole life now. So it's been a bit of a middle-age reawakening, I think. So there you go.
I really love that journey, because I think you said, so you didn't go to art school, but you started out in graphic design. So how did you start out in the graphic design? How did you get started in that then?
Well, that was very much through the web design. So strangely enough, I did a history degree, and then I got involved in libraries. I worked as a library assistant. And at that time, I happened to get a job in a library where they were actually starting off the university website for that institution. So I became a web designer. And then I went off to do a multimedia design and tech master's degree. And that was kind of coding, design and everything. So it's really through the web route, but I've ended up doing quite a lot of graphics for websites and that sort of thing as well. So I was always interested in the design side of it and the color combinations and stuff, but it was all really, purely by chance. I think because the web was so new, like if you were interested in it and you were interested in learning HTML and how to make graphics and really ancient software, then you could just get involved in it. So it was very much self-taught for most of it, I guess.
And do you consider, so what I love about that as well is because, I came to sort of drawing a little bit later in life. I was 35. I'd never really drawn before then. Definitely never painted and never done anything. Mm-hmm. So as you were progressing through this sort of graphic design background, were you starting to do drawing and sketching, or how did that work? How did you work that in?
Well, I did, yes. I would sketch, and I would do sort of online palettes and test them offline and that sort of thing. And I kept a sketchbook as well, which just kind of like everyday stuff. But when I really started trying, and this is more illustrative, when I've got 3 teenage boys, and when they were very small, I used to write stories for them. And I was trying to illustrate them myself, and I was really disappointed with the results. So that's when I really started keeping a sketchbook more, because I just thought it was something that I really loved to do, and I love children's literature and stuff. And I just thought about doing it myself, I needed to improve my skills, and that really is where it came from. So that was probably, I guess, about 15 years ago or something. I started keeping a sketchbook regularly, just with the aim of like improving my skills so I could illustrate stuff for the kids. But that also fed into my web design. So I sort of got a bit more adventurous and did more sort of hand sketching to build up graphics and things for clients. So I still do that. I still do some web design as well alongside printmaking. So yes, the two do merge quite a lot in some ways.
And I also find that I think I'm really interested in people who are self-taught like yourself, because, you know, I come across a lot of people who are self-taught who get into this, and then sometimes there's this real lack of, I'm not sure, confidence, or, you know, it's almost as if, I mean, I think everybody has that sort of imposter syndrome, but usually with people who are self-taught, there really is this background of, well, I didn't go to school and I don't know what I'm doing. However, I love to see people who are self-taught, who are out there, who are doing it. How do you find that part of your journey?
That is an interesting one. I think there's definitely a ceiling and some places that you can't go when you're self-taught. So for example, I run a lot of workshops, and I teach quite a lot, you know, one-to-one and things, mainly in printmaking actually. And I know there's certain institutions that just wouldn't have me because I don't have that background. They can't say, you know, I graduated from the Slade School of Art or Edinburgh College of Art or whatever it is. In terms of my confidence, I think, yes, it definitely does, because you can't help thinking, well, there's this period of time, I think of it as maybe like a 4-year degree, when you get the chance to concentrate on it. And I think that must make a huge difference. And in some ways, I think starting it later in life and self-taught, you maybe make more time for it. So I'm constantly like, I'm always on, switched on sort of thing. So I think I've probably made up for quite a lot. But there is part of me that thinks that I would be in a different place today if I'd had that chance to really focus on it before kids and mortgages and dogs and all that kind of thing. So I guess that's one thing that I do regret slightly. But on the other hand, I think I'd be a different artist as well. So if I'd gone at 18 and left at 22, I may have ended up where I am now anyway. You know, I may have just needed money and gone into web design, so it might not have made any difference. But yes, I think that time where you're really able to focus on it, I think that's the thing that sort of, I guess, maybe affects my confidence sometimes.
Do you think though, now that, because some of that, like you said, I think you could have done that when you were younger, and you actually might still end up where you are today. And I do see that even with people who've gone to school, they sort of go to school and then they maybe have a professional career of some sort, and then they are like, but I want to get away from that. I want to do all this other stuff. You know, I don't want to do the commercial work. And also parenting has a big influence on what we're capable of doing. So it's kind of interesting, because I think you have teenagers now. So maybe you as a parent are starting to gain some freedom perhaps. And how do you feel about that? Yeah.
That's it's sometimes I look back and you don't always realize when you're doing life how different it is, but then sometimes you'll see somebody with younger kids and whatever, and you think, actually, yeah, I do have much more freedom now. You know, they can look after themselves largely. I mean, families still take up a lot of time, but that's the case with anybody. So yes, that's enabled me to expand a little bit more, and not have to plan my life quite so much around them. And I actually went back and I did a year at Leith School of Art doing a landscape painting course last year, just 1 day a week, but I wouldn't have been able to do that when they were smaller. And in some ways that just made me realize how much there is to learn, if you see what I mean. But I think in some ways as well, I got as much as I could out of that course. I absolutely loved it. It was, you know, I think if I'd done that course at 20, I wouldn't have enjoyed it as much. So it's, yeah, you're right.
Absolutely.
Things change in life, and things change for you, and you don't always realize it's happening. But yeah, these have a huge impact on your practice, definitely.
And as part of that journey, so you started out in the graphic design, then you got a lino kit, and that sort of started off your passion into printmaking. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think when I met you, we met, you probably don't remember, you may or may not remember, but it was at a St. Abs
I do.
market.
Yeah, I do.
Like, I think there was a market in the town hall or something. And I feel like this was 8 years ago. I mean, it was a long time ago. So it might have been near the beginning of your journey down this path away from graphic design. And in fact, I have one of your mugs with a dog that's riding like a unicycle. It's so cute. It's my favorite mug. It's in my studio. So a little bit more about that transition into the printmaking, and how did you find that, and how did you get started doing the printmaking?
Well, the printmaking, I guess it was just, there's something really fun about it. And obviously, as somebody that's interested in history as well, quite interested in the history of prints. And of course, relief printing and lino printing came from woodblock printing, which has a really strong tradition in Europe and in the East, in Asia. And I became fascinated with that. And then I was really interested in the fact that I could reproduce an image, an imperfect image, which is what I really like. So on the computer, obviously, there's that chance to fiddle and faff and, come something that's really polished. But I love the fact that no matter how hard you tried, there was always some little marks and stuff that weren't supposed to be there. So it was just, I suppose I fell in love with that, actually. And I still love lino print and woodcut. I still love the look of prints. And at first, my thoughts were, I'm not an artist. I'm not trained as an artist. I can't do just prints. So my ideas were to produce things like bags and t-shirts and mugs, using that sort of graphic look. And I hand printed a lot of t-shirts before I realized that it wasn't very sustainable as a long-term thing, because, you can never have, I'm not a proper shop. I could never have the range of sizes and colors and stuff people liked. And although I did sell quite a lot, hand printing is quite a time-consuming thing to do, and there's quite a high error rate as well. If the block moves slightly and all this kind of stuff. So I did that. I got a small press which I set up in a little room of our living room, and that was the wee blue press from my name with the press, which actually just kind of burst last week. So it's been going that whole time. So I invested in a second-hand press, a little one. And then I started doing markets and things and selling mostly sort of cycling related stuff. And from there, I started getting more curious about other things like monoprinting, which is a lot freer, more painterly. And then I was looking at Japanese woodcut, and after a few years, I got into etching. I went to Edinburgh College of Art and did some sort of part-time courses there in etching, and did some screen printing and all sorts of different techniques. And I guess now I don't do that much lino, really. I quite like dry point etching, and I do quite a lot of monoprinting. But generally, I just love the whole thing around printmaking. It's kind of different to art in that there's a slightly stronger community there, a slightly stronger identity, and people in it tend to be quite experimental. But I'm quite interested in, there are some people in printmaking who take one thing, say lino cut, and they delve really, really deep into it and end up doing like prints with multiple layers and layers of color and stuff, really complicated stuff. And there are others who just love to kind of play with lots of different techniques and jam them all together and see what happens and stuff. And I'm definitely one of those people. So I think even with lino, I probably will go back to it at some point. It's just that kind of, I guess, as my art is growing, my taste is changing, and I tend to be getting more involved in experimentation with color and things like that. And lino print is not the best medium for that. It's quite different. Sorry, that's a bit of a ramble. So I hope I've
No, I mean, that's really good because I
question.
think also, these things go in cycles. I find myself as well, there's sort of a cyclical journey that we go on. So, sometimes I'm painting animals, then I go off and paint flowers, then I come back and paint animals. And it's probably similar with as you're playing around and experimenting with all these different printmaking techniques. You're doing lino, then you're doing monoprints, then you're doing the dry point etching, then you go back to lino, but you're bringing in this knowledge that you've gained from these other areas. And that's sort of what's fun to play with as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And on that journey, I mean, it's a couple of points that have come up that are interesting, because I know and just talking about self-taught, because I love self-taught artists. And if I could just say to every single one, just have confidence in who you are, because it's quite unique. But also you talk about these little courses that you've done along the way. And to me, that is more important. There are so many fabulous small courses out there that are just right for you, right place, right time. And you gain so much knowledge from them. So I think that's really important, because you're talking about these as you go along. And it's really important to kind of say to people that these are just as valid as anything else you do.
Yeah, I think you're right. And, I've got loads out of the shorter courses as I've gone. And when my sons were small, that was my way of getting away. For maybe one evening a week, I'd get the train to Edinburgh, and I'd have a coffee. And, and at that time, it was just like, it was partly an excuse to get out. But on some of the courses, things like etching, you can't really, you can do it yourself at home, but it's not easy. So I started out with the techniques like lino printing, woodcut, monoprint that you can actually do at home, and with a small press. But as you progress, you become more, you want to experiment a little bit more. Then you do need a different sort of press, and you do need the support of, I think, people that know what they're doing. And that's one reason why I love teaching it, because I think with most of these things, and probably like a lot of people who get lino print kits, you sort of watch YouTube videos, you read books, but actually just somebody to say, you need to do it back to front, or have you thought about this, and actually show you what you're doing is really valuable with techniques like that. So yes, I have kind of 3 presses now, and I can do a lot more from home, but I wouldn't have been able to get where I am without actually going and doing these shorter courses along the way. Certainly, it's been really useful.
I really love that. And then also thinking about that journey. So thinking about, you have done the lino print, and then you said you were doing things that you could do from home, and then moving into the etching perhaps. And then also you've spoken about moving into painting. So what has that been like, that journey that you've done?
Well, I think that's required a level of confidence, and I think I've always known that it would probably suit me, because I am quite experimental, and because it's a completely different way of thinking about it. So with most printmaking techniques, or a lot of them anyway, you have to do a lot of your planning beforehand. So you really have to know what you're doing, unless you're very experimental. You need to, quite often I would have sketches and things, and I would turn that into something which I would trace a plan, and then trace onto the lino block, and then carve around it. Whereas painting, it's just like, oh my God, I can do anything. So at first, I think I found it almost quite difficult to do, because even with monoprinting, you get all this noise from the plate, or marks and things, accidental marks, which are made in the process. And when it's just you and some paint, that can be quite, you feel like your marks have to be intentional, and obviously they don't, and I'm learning that process. But actually, I think that process is probably more suited to me, and because I love color so much, having that freedom can be, I just love it, actually. I love painting, but I also love printmaking, so it's kind of, painting's been quite a journey, and it's certainly informing my printmaking as well, because I'm trying to be looser and more painterly with my monoprint, and I've bought a tiny press it's a 3D printed press it's a print project. It's from this guy in Germany who started it off, and it's tiny. It's like 7 centimeters by 7 centimeter print size, and I've tended to use those almost as sketches for painting. So it's been, it's just, I think I'll probably continue painting. But yes, it's allowed me to go big and to go colourful and to just, express myself a bit more, I think, than.
I really like how these are sort of playing off each other, how you're using, that little printing press as a almost sketch, to create the sketches for the paintings, and then how the paintings and that, doing gestural or painterly marks is then going back into your mono printing as well. And again, I like how they're feeding off of each other. That sounds really nice, like really great connections to be making.
It is. I was reading about, I think it's Debenkorn and his Ocean Park series. And he actually, he's done a lot of paintings, but apparently did lots of etchings and stuff as well. So it was, and that's kind of what I've done. So I did a series in the summer for the end of my landscape course. And working out the painting compositions, I used monoprinting. So I took sketches. I then went on to do some monoprints and things with that, and that helped me sort of process the sketches, come away from them a bit, distance myself, so I'm finding that I like the monoprints in themselves, but it's almost like a journey. So it's like you start off with sketches, then you move to prints, and then they go on to inform your bigger paintings. And none of these things are similar in the end, but it's all part of the melting pot that kind of goes in. As you know, it's not like you could, unless you just sort of painting plein air or something and straight from the landscape, then it's, it takes a while for these things to sort of brew.
Absolutely. I call it feeding the beast, because it doesn't matter what you need, doesn't matter what you're doing, but you kind of have to keep feeding that beast, whether it's visual input or, how you're doing things. And that's very true. Actually, that's a really good way to put it. Yeah. So feeding the beast is. It's hungry. It's very hungry.
It is. Yeah, I know. Yeah. It can be a bit soul destroying for a while, can it? But in other ways, it's like,
I think it can. I don't know that it's soul destroying, but I think that it can be. You can feel quite lonely sometimes about what's going on, and perhaps thinking, why am I doing this? And who is this for? Is this for me, or is this for other people? And these are questions that we have.
Yeah. It takes a while to realize, doesn't it, that we're all. All of us are kind of, art is something where you're very up and down. You can look at a painting one day and you feel like, oh, amazing, this is great. I'm really happy with this. And then you go back the next day and your heart sinks, or the opposite is true as well. It's just, you're constantly sort of, I think because it's so close to you, it's unlike any other job in some ways, isn't it? I guess, musicians and writers and things must do the same. So because it's coming out of you, it's quite unique, isn't it? It is. Yeah,
it's so very personal. It's so very personal. And then, but at the same time, we are making it to show to other people. I'm not making it to keep it in my back room, and that's where probably some of the struggle comes from. I have to show this to people. Are they going to like it? And if they don't like it, yes, I have an ego, so I want people to like it.
That's why social media is so difficult, isn't it? Because in some ways it's fantastic, because probably I wouldn't have had a platform 20 years ago. But on the other hand, there's so much fantastic work out there, and you can get really caught up on how many Instagram likes you have and stuff. And that, that can be bad for your practice in some ways, because you find yourself creating work that's maybe not what you want to create, because you think you might get sales or even at some level likes and some kind of appreciation for what you're doing. So,
Absolutely. So thinking about that, what are the things that inspire you, and how do you find your inspiration?
I suppose it's fairly straightforward. I mean, I'm just an outdoors sort of person, you know. I just swim all year round, and well, most years, some years I swim all year round. I was in yesterday, so you know, so the sea and running with the dogs and like the local landscape really. So it's, yeah, I guess it's the light, and for me that the landscape and getting out isn't just, it's not just nice to look at, it's kind of a necessity, and it's something that at a much deeper level I have to do, if that makes sense. So to me, sort of looking at a landscape, even an abstracted one, I want people to get that sense of emotion. And you know, for me, it's quite tied up with things like global warming and, you know, everything that we're going through and have gone through for the last 5 years. That's been the thing I think that's kept me sane, really. And I want that to come through somehow in the work I produce.
And it's kind of interesting because you started out, again, going back to the graphic design and very graphic, and then are moving into the landscape. And I know you've just finished or had finished a course that was centered around landscape, but do you think that landscape is sort of something that you're going to continue to develop as an artist, like landscape work, pictures?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I picked that course because my prints moved before I did the landscape course. My prints had really moved from, as soon as I started monoprinting and things, they kind of quickly I got to a point where I was creating landscape work and sometimes putting a cyclist in it, and then thinking, why have I put that cyclist there? You know, it's because I think that's it. I suppose I kind of got used to the fact that I should have an animal or a cyclist or something in there somewhere. What happens if I take the cyclist or the animal out? And really my prints and sketches and stuff were going that way anyway. So yeah, generally the landscape, but I would never say never. I mean, I'm doing life drawing classes at the moment, and I am drawn to other artists' work with figures in. So I would never say never, because I do like to experiment and stuff. At the moment, I don't feel that that's what I want to concentrate on. I'm quite happy doing landscape, and really the sea is what is kind of driven me for the last few years. But a lot of my paintings have kind of figures in there somewhere, even if they're quite abstract, because I'm quite interested in when you're kind of on a beach or whatever, and you see people looking at the sea. It's almost like a religious experience, you know. People talking to each other look at the sea. They don't look at each other. And if you see somebody walking on the beach looking at the sea, you're always thinking, what are they thinking about? You know, they might just be thinking, I'm going to have sausages for tea, but they look like they're having like really profound thoughts. So that's our reaction to the sea and the landscape, is something that fascinates me. So I suspect that may come, the sort of human aspect of it may come into it a bit more in the future.
I love that as well. That sort of, you know, doing landscape separately, doing almost the figure drawing separately, and then finding, oh, actually these things are starting to merge together and how they meet up. That's a really fascinating process as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's always, again, it always fascinates me, a bit like printmaking. You get artists who really drill down. So you sound like you're probably a bit like me in that you like to experiment and try different things, but you get people who are portrait painters, who are plein air landscape painters, and they're, you know, they find enough in that to sort of really sort of keep them going. And in some ways I wish I was like that, because I would have less kit to start. I would, you know, but I think I've just got to accept I'm one of these people that I'm fascinated by colours and pigments at the moment, and I'm thinking about trying to make my own paints and things, and printmaking ink. So it's that sort of thing. You sort of, it's all connected.
Yeah, I think yeah, definitely very similar to you. I also often think, oh, I wish I could just sort of settle on one thing, and I do admire people who can do that, but at the same time, I think, wow, I feel like I would grow bored. My brain can't go there. So my brain would be like, wow, this is boring. We've done, you know, 50 million poor cats or whatever. So I like to do animals, but so I can't do that. And I think playing and exploring to me is the fascinating part of what I do as well. And I am starting to notice, though, that like thematically, I return to animals over and over and over again.
Right,
So
okay.
I've sort of accepted that actually I like animals, I like characters, so I'm sort of accepting these are bits that I'm going to keep returning to. But surrounding that, I might do any sort of printmaking, painting. Like I don't have any, this is who I am as an artist. So it's been, I think it's been a fascinating journey as well, just to see where I'm going and how I go. Yeah.
I bet this has helped you actually. So speaking to lots of other people, has that made you feel better about that, or
I've loved it because I think when you speak to people, it definitely makes me feel better because it makes me feel more confident a little bit. It helps me consolidate kind of what's going on in my own practice. Seeing people, well, and nobody has sat down and said, yeah, this has been a path from A to B. Everybody's like, this path is so wiggly through the forest, down by the lake. There's nothing, there's surprises all the time. And even though we're the creators, our brains continue to surprise us with what they come up with. And you think, well, I created that, so why don't I understand what I've created? How can this be? Yeah.
I think definitely. And have you found yourself, this is another thing I'm interested in, do you find yourself getting more abstracted as you've gone on in your art journey, or not? Are you still quite?
Well, I think it's interesting because you, with your graphic design background, and me, I started out in illustration partly because I could understand how illustrators get paid. That to me was a very straightforward relationship. Somebody hires you to do work, you do it, you get paid for it. Whereas what I do now, because I've been trying to move away from commercial work and into sort of the painting side of things, I am finding things becoming more abstracted, and I'm playing around with that a lot more as well. But I don't know how far, I'm sort of at the beginning of that side of things, I think. So we'll see where I go with it. It's
interesting. It's because you see people sort of flip back and forward a little bit as well, and I'm quite interested in, because I find myself now, if I do a sketch or turn it into a painting, if it's too little, I'm quite dissatisfied, because I'm thinking that I could photograph. I mean, I'm never going to do photorealistic, but I could photograph that. But I'm at the beginning of that, like you, and I'm thinking, I know that I'm not satisfied with what I'm doing, but I need to be playing around a bit more with color and shape and to see.
I would say we're very similar in our journey, because I'm a lot of into color these days. How is color working? How does it work on the canvas? How do they work together? And shapes as well. And very similar, if I do an animal that's I'm not at all interested in realism. So if my animals are too illustrative or too realistic, I get quite mean with myself. I need to stop that bit. But I get like, oh, why are you doing it this way? That's so twee, or, what are you thinking? And you really need to push further and see what it could be. How abstract can I go, but still have people recognize this as an animal? Because I do like that.
That's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, you're right. Because when you get to the point where it's like two shapes on a canvas and you've no idea what it's supposed to be, then that's quite tricky. I think composition and color and things really take over in that case, don't they? And that's quite fascinating as well. How you can look at something that's just a color. And
it's fun to play with and to see. And it is fun to get people to look at your stuff and then to see what they see, because it's always fascinating. Nobody ever sees what I see, that's for sure. Even when I'm painting animals, I think, oh, this is a crab, and they're like, oh, this is a spider, or this is a donkey, and I'm like, no.
No, I had that as well. It's just in the end you just go, whatever, because it's now their piece of art, isn't it, if
Absolutely.
They want to.
But I love that. I love to see people interpret stuff and it be so completely different than what I set out. To me, that's fascinating.
It's just fascinating, you're right. And that sort of that kind of line, isn't it, sort of somewhere you've got like ultra realistic at one point and completely abstract at the other, and when we're all kind of bobbing about somewhere.
And playing
Most of
around
us are
with that.
bobbing about, playing
Yeah.
around and changing, and it's just, but we all have this idea that we should be concentrating on one thing. It's just like,
I think we can give that
funny.
up. I feel like we can just give that up now. And you said bobbing around, and it has reminded me, it's just pulled a little, I saw on your website and it cracked me up, but you were sketching in the sea. You had a sketchbook and you were in the sea. So you're probably like, what are you talking about? So I'd love to hear, do you like to sketch in the sea? And tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, I do. I created a series. This was, when was it? I think it was 2020, maybe it's 21. I had an exhibition and it was swimscape. And what I would do was every time I had a swim, I had small kind of A6 bits of handmade paper and water soluble graphite or crayons or something. And after a swim, I would come out, get my stuff, and then go back into the water. And it's like, do the waves while I was actually standing in the sea, because that gives you a completely different, obviously they're nothing like waves. They don't resemble waves at all, but it's like what I wanted was some of the movement and things that you get, because it's really difficult. Obviously the sea is probably one of the most difficult things you can depict, isn't it? So yeah, that was good fun. And I took it a step further this year. I actually went snorkeling and I borrowed a diver's board. So I was snorkeling out and I had this, you could draw under the water. So I was drawing there as well. And of course, like the sketches that I'm producing are pretty, they're not meaningless, but for me, they sort of bring things back. So it was almost like a note to self. So I had this diver's board full of stuff and I turned them into a series of small abstract paintings that I did this summer. So yeah, I just quite like the energy and the sort of high you get when you're in the water or coming out of the water. You can lose it if you sort of take photos and do sketches from that and things. And also you're kind of usually shivering, so you're it's like drawing with your wrong hand or something, because you're kind of a bit shaky. And so quite enjoy that. I do like to do it when I come out, because I love it, because
you're capturing so much more. You're capturing so much more than just what you see, because it's immediate, it's time, it's place, it's everything. Like you said, you're shivering. And even if you come away and there's almost, even if, let's say, all the marks get washed away, even that's part of the process as well. Yeah,
some of them are, because obviously some of that I would sort of use the seawater to dissolve the graphite and stuff and make patterns and things. And that can be nice as well. Sometimes, like you say, I'll drop it in because my hands aren't working properly, but that's kind of, and that brings back different, you can take photos, but that brings back different memories. You look at the sort of work that you did and it sort of brings back, it's more sort of straight to the feelings rather than the visual senses that you would get from a camera or something, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting, because then when you take that into whether it's printmaking or painting, you're still trying to capture that feeling, that immediacy, that moment that you had of being in the ocean and drawing. Yes,
you're right. That kind of comes back to the abstract versus real again, isn't it? Because you could probably go and produce a really nice painting of that beach, but that's not quite what I'm wanting to do. I'm wanting to produce the feeling that I had at the beach, or rather than this is Coldingham Bay or whatever it is where I was swimming at the time. So yeah. And
so now, are you doing this full time? Or are you just starting to go full time, or what's your balance at the moment with your creative career?
Interesting one. I've actually just handed in my notice. I have a part-time job, which I only started about maybe 18 months ago, and it was kind of post-pandemic. I was starting to build up teaching and a lot more workshops and things, and I lost that obviously in 2020. So I went back into sort of web design and marketing for a couple of days a week for a local company. And now I've found that I'm doing more workshops and things, and I've been a bit all over the place, so I'm not really getting much time to paint and stuff. So I decided to hand in my notice, but I'm still quite nervous about it. So I've got some teaching booked for the new year. I'm also doing the Borders Art Fair, which is I've tried to get into before and failed. So I've got a stand this year, and I feel like I need to like focus on making some work for that. So yeah, I'm a bit sort of aha, a bit
what have I done?
slightly terrified, yeah, because it's different making stuff and having to sell it is, you know, having that sort of regular income has been good, but I am still doing some web design alongside that, so as a freelance. So I've got a couple of web design projects as well, so I'll probably end up just as busy as I am now, but yeah, it was a decision I've taken, so
yeah,
see how it goes, and if it doesn't go well, I'll go back and get another part-time job.
Well, and there's nothing wrong with it. I've been speaking to lots of people about what part-time jobs we do, and how, you know, how do you support yourself doing this, because sometimes, yeah, the selling of the art and also selling art can be very tricky if you're worried about making money from it, because then that starts to cloud, you know, what you're making, and suddenly you're thinking, is this going to go in somebody's living room? And you don't necessarily want to be thinking about that thing when you're creating. So sometimes having a part-time job, I think, can be a really wonderful if it fits in as well. But also that decision to say, actually, this is what I want to do, and I want to try to do this full time. That's really important as well. And to feel like you're perhaps ready to take that leap.
Yes. I mean, it's definitely a leap. And I think I wouldn't say that I'm confident about it at all, but I would say I'm approaching it slightly differently. So I suppose I'm trying to make up, because I love the teaching side of things. So I'm trying to make up with that what the part-time job's done. So it's not like I'll be full-time creating, but I'm hoping to achieve some kind of slightly better balance, because at the moment I'm kind of saying I've had to say no to some teaching opportunities just because I just physically can't do it all, and I feel like I'm not giving myself enough time and space to create an experiment. So I feel like if I didn't do something, then something has to go, if you see what I mean. So yeah.
And I suppose it's nice with the teaching, because I teach as well, and I feel like in teaching art classes especially, that really feeds into my creativity, and I learn so much from my students, and then so that's a really nice, again, that cyclical, like I learn from them, they learn from me, and that's really nice to see that journey going on.
Yeah, it can be really inspiring, teaching. So although it's quite, as you'll know, it's quite time intensive, and materials can be quite expensive as well. Printmaking materials have just gone
probably more so for you than for me.
It has gone a bit mad, but yeah, I do find that I do come away quite often inspired, and I love the connections you make with people as well. So that's really rewarding as well. So I didn't really want to give that up either. So so we'll see how it goes.
And so what are so you said you have some courses coming up next year, a few workshops, and where is that going to be?
Well, the first one I've got is I do a print club, and that's a local art centre called Allen Bank Art. That'll run for 8 weeks from January. So that's kind of like, we'll do a different technique every week, but I'll have some people coming back that have done one that I just run this year, and want to focus on something in particular. So it's really just like 2.5 hours. I'll have the presses there. People can kind of either do their own thing, get help with stuff. So that's quite a nice one, actually. Oh, dog.
Dog's waking up.
Yeah, there we go. Minnie the Cocker Spaniel. So I've got that coming up. I've got some Christmas lino print sessions coming up as well in iMouth, and I'm actually going to start trying to do some one-to-one or one-to-two work in a gallery in Bridge Street in Berwick. So people will be able to come in and get some like one-to-one tuition. I've started trialing that this year, so that's been going quite well. So that's interesting as well, because one-to-one is very different, as you'll know. You know, like a couple of hours is is quite intensive, and people can actually learn quite a lot in that time. So I'm hoping to expand that a little bit as well.
And you also mentioned, and you're putting, you said exhibition, you have an exhibition coming up as well.
Yeah, that's at the Borders Art Fair.
Okay,
So,
Borders Art Fair.
Yeah, so that's in Kelso. That happens every year. So it's a huge one, actually, well, in terms of the Borders. So there's, a lot of different stands. I've also filmed a workshop for them on monoprinting at home. So there'll be like 3 small tutorials, and that will be free on the Borders Art Fair website in March. That's through Allen Bank Arts as well. They do quite a lot of work in this area. So that's the main one, and I'm hoping to get out and do some smaller art fairs and things again as well. So it's just getting that balance right, isn't it? Just
absolutely
making enough work to sell, and so I've got my website and stuff, and I sell there, but I do like to kind of get out and about and do stuff in person. So.
And I definitely find having the deadlines, especially of like art fairs and shows, that really does help me push my work as well, because I suddenly think, whoa, I need 20 pieces and I need to get them done pretty sharpish.
Yeah. Well, that's where print help as well, actually, because even though I don't tend to produce big editions, because I get too bored. So if I do like a dry point, then I'll maybe produce 5 or 6 of them. But that does help in a way, because you've got that volume. So the smaller prints are quite nice to take alongside sort of bigger paintings and stuff. So yeah, I need to concentrate on both, actually.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And what we'll do is I'll put all the links down below on the show notes to your upcoming courses, as well as the art fair, and also your website and your Instagram details. So I'll let everybody know how to find you and get in touch with you. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for interviewing. It was really fascinating. I loved getting to hear your journey and your story behind all your art.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. It's been, I've never been in a podcast before, so it's quite exciting.
Woohoo, first one. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Studio Notes with me, Sasha DeWitt, and guest Emma Jones of We Blue Press. I love the way that she actively engages with her surroundings to create her artworks. To find out more about her work, her courses, and upcoming exhibitions, you can click the links below. If you like this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe, as it really helps others to find us. And of course, thank you so much for listening to Studio Notes with me, Sasha DeWitt. Big shout out to the Arts Council, who have given funding for this podcast as part of my DYCP grant. So thank you.